So we're now recording, and I would like to welcome you to the Nullawarre community, township and community, to the Fire Safety Essentials presentation presented tonight by me, Julie Owens, with my helper, Gavin Thomas.
Hello there, everybody.
Because of technical issues, you can hear him, but you won't be able to see him. Oh, just excuse me a minute. I think I have pressed the wrong button. Can you still see my screen?
Yep. But it's like your computer. Now that's full screen again then.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. We will continue this presentation. You'll have to forgive us tonight if there's a few hiccups. It's the first time that Gavin and I have presented on our own. So yeah, just forgive us if there's any hiccups. As usual, in CFA meetings and any meetings, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are hosting this meeting today, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and any other Aboriginal people here today. Just a few words about the technology, which is new to us, a new way of presenting these meetings. We're in a webinar, which means that we can't see you, and you are only able to interact with us through the chat and the polls. We will be asking you to complete some polls along the journey. The chat function should be on your toolbar, and if you hover your mouse over that function, over that little symbol, you will be able, a chat box will come up. If you'd like to do that now, you can see that there is a bit of chat in that box now. Make sure you press all panelists and attendees and just type something in. Let us know where you're from, what part of Nullawarre you're from. I have to tell you that this is being recorded, but it has been recorded for our benefit, not for you. The recording will not be able to show who's in this meeting or what is what's recorded on the chat or the polls. It will not be recorded. This session is to empower you with fire safety essentials. And I have to also let you know that it is a pretty basic, it starts at a basic level. If you have any questions or any comments to make, please use the chat function. The other thing we can use is polls. Polls are a way of engaging with you, asking questions and you answering them. So they are anonymous, they're optional. You scroll through them for a response, and then when you've got your response, you submit. In fact, right now we might actually start a poll, launch a poll. If I launch a poll, this is simply a poll asking you how long you've lived in the area. Have you been to a CFA meeting before? And how did you find out about this session? And rate your knowledge around fire. So if you could tick one of those, 1 to 1 year, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, or 10 years. Have you been to a meeting before? Yes or no? You can't remember. How did you find out about the session? There's a number of things there.
It's good to see a few people voting already. That's good, Jules.
Yes, and then rate your knowledge around fire. This gives us some idea of how the meetings have been advertised, and then how we direct meetings to. I'll just end the polling there and share the results.
Okay, so most people here have been in the area for quite a while, and a couple have been to a meeting. And just looking at the how did you find out about it? Yeah, some social media looks like that's quite a successful way of promoting things too. And rating your knowledge, that's good. People are very self-effacing, and a lot of them don't rate their knowledge of fire very high. So
So
good
we'll
that you're
be
here today.
Yeah, and that's why we're here today. So I'll stop sharing those results, and you might find that you'll need to shut that polling box yourself. So if you need to do that. Okay, so what are we here for today? What are the learning outcomes? What are we going to be talking about? First of all, we're going to be talking about understanding our local risks. So we'll look at the risks around Nullawarre and surrounds. We'll look at what to expect from fire, what we know about fire and what to expect from fire. We'll look at how we know if there is a fire, and that's our communication systems. Can we be sure that there is a fire? The difference between official forms of communication and informal ones. Our planning and decision making. We look at what our planning and decision making should look like. And then, of course, if everything else fails, what we should do. So surviving that. We must say that some of this content, and especially the animations, may be quite distressing to some. So if you need at any time to look away from those animations, then please do so. All right, we'll understand our local fire risks. The landscape around Nullawarre is basically grassland, but there is also areas of bush. And although people in Gippsland might say there's no hills, there are some undulating landscapes. Nullawarre is located in the municipality of Moyne. The town's population is holding steady at about 267. It's a rural locality in the Western Victoria on the Great Ocean Road, 25 kilometres southeast of Warrnambool. It's about the same distance from Timboon to the east. And on the western edge is what is the Hurtsbury Forest. So there is some forest areas as well as grasslands. Nullawarre is situated in a large area of good dairying and grazing land. It has quite a township, quite a populated township, quite an active township. There's the pub and the school and the general store. And there is also a tremendous community spirit in Nullawarre. But let's talk about first the Victorian landscape, because Nullawarre is typical of most of the Victorian, or at least the southwest Victorian landscape. Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. It has grassland, bushland, mountains and farmland. Fire was first used in Australia millions of years ago by its original owners, by the Indigenous people. Most fires were started by lightning, those used by the Indigenous people for reduce level of fuel, keep vegetation from becoming too dense and therefore hard to walk through, were lit in the right conditions. But most recent fires that we've experienced have been started by lightning. We might at this stage actually ask people to use the chat function to say what they think their local risks may be. What sort of risks do you think you have in your area? And while Gav's actually having a look at that and monitoring that, I might go on to the next slide. We'll talk about the fire areas and the fire districts. So there are different weather districts across the state, and each fire district has its own weather, has its own risks. Another thing we need to take into account is the seasonal outlook. But if you look at the map, you'll see that we are in the southwest. Nullawarre is in the southwest, and its fire weather is different from the weather that the Wimmera or the Mallee might. I can see people are from different areas, and yes, different areas. Thank you for that. Some are further out, some are towards Warrnambool. Now, if we look at the weather, if you look at the seasonal outlook, this slide shows two views of Australia, and these were taken at the end of last year. You'll see that this fire season, a possible La Nina conditions are expected, and that will reduce the risk of prolonged fire activity across most of Australia compared to last year. So what does La Nina mean? Increased rainfall across much of Australia, cooler daytime temperatures south of the tropics, and warmer overnight temperatures in the north. The last La Nina appeared during the winter of 2017-18, and El Nino followed in 2018-2019. So Nullawarre is a part of Victoria that has experienced slightly higher or above average rainfall and has above average soil moisture. There's enough moisture to make the grass grow well, but it will dry off quickly as soon as we experience some warm weather. And we might have seen that and experienced that last week. Nearby bush will also dry out quickly. There is an increased potential for fast-moving grass fires. Like every season, we need to be prepared for fire that could happen in this high fuel load, with this high fuel load. So local vegetation. Let's talk about, once again, if you would like to use the chat function, and just let us know what you think about what our local vegetation is. That's right, there is high amounts of fuel along the, sorry, just lost it there for a minute, Gav. Along the roadside. Someone has put in that the roadside fuel loads.
You'll know, most of you will be very much aware of the amount of grass that tends to grow alongside roads in Western Victoria, whether it's the Hamilton Highway, even the Princes Highway, and then down on the roads down around Nullawarre. That's always a major concern and an issue for a lot of people, especially with cholera and things like that. So that's something to consider. And
that is a local risk. So yes, and of course some of the roads we travel through to get to Nullawarre or from Nullawarre has that bushland on either side as well. We might actually launch another poll now. I'd like you to have a look at what you think the local risk in your area is. So if I launch this poll, you'll see that we're asking, what are some of the things that could make your local area a high risk area? This is multiple choice. So windy roads, trees hanging over access roads and escape routes, high tourist area in summer, the speed of grass fires, numerous grass fires sparked by embers, or high fuel load. It's multiple choice, so tick one or as many as those as you like. And remember that we can't tell who's ticking what. None of these are right or wrong. So, and don't forget to tick.
And just looking at one there, just for a little bit of confusion, it's not windy roads, it's windy roads.
Windy roads. Yes, thank you, Gavin. We must tell our boss that to get that changed. We'll end the polling there and share the results. So
okay, so for people down around your area, I noticed that the high tourist area in summer has been ticked. It might necessarily have been this year, but in a normal pre-COVID year, that is a massive issue down there. So it's good that a lot of people have identified that. people are aware of the speed of grass fires, which can really hurtle through. Good. There's people actually talked about embers, because embers coming from perhaps some of the bush burning and then making spot fires well ahead. And
we've already talked about.
Yeah, and there's some concerns about high fuel loads too when we've got a wet year, so that's good. Well done to that, people.
Thanks, Gavin. We'll just close that that polls box and talk about our local brigade. So what we're asking you is, do you expect, if there is a grass fire close to your property, do you expect a tanker to turn up? Do you expect the brigade to be there to help you with that fire? Do you think that with one tanker, one trailer, one FCV, with 116 properties and 267 people in Nullawarre, do you expect there to be a tanker at your driveway if there's a fire? And I think that's a rhetorical question, because we really can't expect the brigade to be everywhere if a fire were to break out. So what we're saying is that you need to look after yourself. You need to have a plan yourself to know what you will do and where you will go, and be ready for it. So your basic messages are, you have to understand the various risks in your area and what you can do to mitigate those. That may have an awareness of your personal responsibility. So we might move on to what to expect from fire. Now, we do know that that Victoria has a lot of fires, and last year there were huge fires in Victoria. But let's get under the skin of fires. We might look at a couple of animations. Now, remember that I warned you that these could be quite graphic, and if you need to look away, please do that. I'm going to, if this works, share an animation, and this animation will show, is talking about ember attack. Ember attack is one of the main reasons people lose property in a fire. Ember attack happens in grassland as well as bush. Grass fires, fast-moving hot grass fires, can cause embers. Sometimes people think that if they don't live near a bush, then the embers are not a problem. Remember, Nullawarre does have bush around it, and there has been cases where, when the frame forest has been on fire, embers have reached Nullawarre. So we're going to watch this this animation, and we'll have a talk about it afterwards.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs, and pieces of bark. They help the bushfire spread by starting spot fires ahead of the main fire front.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I've done something wrong here. I'm going to have to just close that.
So these meetings and the technology, it's all been dropped upon us in this year, and we've all been rushing around, and I'm sure a lot of people, if you've got other jobs, are working around with Zoom. So you probably all understand these situations. So thanks for sticking with us.
Thank you. What I will do is I need to close that, and I'll close it again. Just okay. I thought I had this. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I can see that I haven't. Gavin, I'm sorry to do this to you, but can you just
okay, so ember attacks. Would you like me to talk about ember attacks?
Yeah, that would be good, and I'll try.
Okay, so just think back a few years ago to how the areas that you people live in were severely affected with fast-moving grass fires on St. Patrick's Day. Just think about the strength of winds on that day, and
Now we will share this Ember attack screen.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs and pieces of bark. They help the bushfire spread by starting spot fires ahead of the main fire front. Short distance ember attacks happen when leaves and small pieces of bark are blown from burning trees. The intense shower of sparks that forms fills the air with hot, burning embers, which will land on nearby vegetation and properties. The hot embers can easily land and get into your clothes and burn your skin, eyes and airways. Small fires will start all around you and quickly become uncontrollable. The resulting chaos creates confusion as the fire seems to come from many directions, meaning it will be difficult to make good decisions about your safety. The experience will be physically exhausting and emotionally traumatic. Long-distance ember attack is caused by large bushfires that generate intense heat. As the hot air rises, it forms a column of smoke that sucks in air like a vacuum, increasing the intensity of the fire. The updraft in the column lifts embers, like large pieces of burning ribbon bark, hundreds of metres into the air, where strong winds can carry them many kilometres beyond the fire front. On Black Saturday, embers travelled more than 30 kilometres ahead of the main fire. When these embers land, they often start fires where leaves naturally accumulate, like in gutters, doorways and garden beds. So while you might think you're safe when a bushfire is far away, embers can fall from the sky and land around your home long before you even know there's a fire. But remember, your home isn't the only thing under threat during an ember attack. By the time you realise the danger, it might be too late as escape routes become jammed. Embers can also start fires on roads and block them completely, making late evacuation dangerous or impossible. That's why leaving early, before a fire starts, is always your safest option.
Sorry, I've
Wonderful to visit some friends.
Thank you, Gab, and thank you for saving me there. I'm not sure whether I've actually lined up the next little animation that I really do want to show you. So even if I do have to go out of it again like I did and it doesn't work properly, we will watch it. But as Gavin said, the ember attack can happen anywhere and at any time during a fire, and it is the biggest cause of property loss during a fire. And the animation would have shown you why that was. The next thing we've got to look at is radiant heat. Now, radiant heat, if ember attack or embers are the greatest loss of property during a fire, then radiant heat is the greatest loss of human life or of life. You'll find that that people are not designed to withstand radiant heat. And this little animation, once again, it could be quite distressing. So people would like to look away, that's fine. But let's just hope this works when I press this button. Let's hope it works. And it doesn't seem to have, so I'm just going to try
Okay,
again.
so the thing about radiant heat is, as Julie said, people don't get killed by flames coming up and licking them and catching their clothes on fire. It's the fact that well before the flames get to you, they're generating that much heat that the actual invisible heat that's coming towards you is enough to make your body respond negatively. On days like Black Saturday, where there was incredibly hot weather, massive fuel loads, with incredibly high flame heights. Radiant heat was affecting people up to like a kilometre. So just be very aware of the fact that radiant heat is the thing that kills you. So the best way to protect yourself from radiant heat is to get out of the direct effect of it. This will be shown in the video once we get organised.
So Gav, can you just help me? Are you looking at a
I'm looking at a screen that's got 3 little things to click on.
Oh, okay, so I haven't done it correctly because I've clicked on one of those little things and it's obviously not working. Right. Oh, perhaps I don't think I was meant to double click. What can you see now?
I can see it, and I'd press play and let's go.
Okay, thank you.
Radiant heat.
Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. Every summer, bushfires threaten properties and lives. But did you know it's not the flames that kill most bushfire victims? No, it's the radiant heat. Most victims die from the effects of radiant heat long before they're reached by the flames. Radiant heat is what you feel when you sit next to a campfire. If a campfire heats up to 2 kilowatts per square metre, you'll feel that it's too hot and will want to move back from the fire. If you don't, this amount of radiant heat is enough to cause burns and blisters in as little as 40 seconds. At 12 kilowatts, it can cause some materials like dry timber to ignite. A bushfire can reach 100 kilowatts, and the effects can be truly catastrophic. For humans, radiant heat can cause burns from 100 metres away and cause a dangerous increase in body temperature. Radiant heat can cause the rapid onset of heat stroke. Heat stroke damages your brain, meaning you won't be able to concentrate to make good decisions as the fire arrives. Other impacts include severe damage of internal organs and death. There are some things you can do if you're caught in a fire. Cover your skin with long-sleeved natural fibre clothing, like wool. It's also useful to know that radiant heat only travels in straight lines and can't bend around corners. So, sheltering behind or inside solid structures may help protect you. But be aware, radiant heat will travel straight through glass. The best defence against radiant heat is a simple one. If you're not anywhere near a bushfire, its radiant heat can't hurt you. Leaving early is always your safest option.
Obviously, I haven't got it down pat as to now I meant to go one to the other. So thank you, Gavin. That was really good to help me out there when that technology. But you will see by the radiant heat why it is important to stay away from, to not be there. And if we look at this next slide, this will give you let you see graphically what radiant heat can do to the sides of houses and to signs. Just shows the heat that is there, and there's no direct flame, but it is just that heat.
And that was from near Marysville, the sign they were saying to Lake Mountain. So they were very, very badly affected by radiant heat in those fires.
If we look at some of these quotes, and I'm not going to try and show you any more videos, but if we look at some of these quotes, people, the CFA interview people after fires to get their ideas of how they survived and what we could do as CFA could do better. And if you look at some of these quotes, one of the things that comes out is leave, don't stay. If there's a fire, don't be around, leave early. So your take-home message is that radiant heat is the biggest killer. That
Not to be there.
Not to be there, yes. Decisions your decisions can be impacted at the time. So if you think that you can make proper decisions or rational decisions in that time of stress, you may not be able to do that. Ember attack can come very quickly and it spreads fires quickly. Ember attack can get to your property well before a fire can, and radiant heat is a big killer. What we might do now is actually launch another poll. So I'm going to launch, this is to, what do you expect from fire? How are you going to react in a fire? What will you be thinking? This poll asks you what you think would impact your ability to make good decisions. And if you look at these things, stress, rapidly changing situation, things not going to plan, not having enough time or communication breakdown, once again, it's multiple choice. Do you think any of those things might impact your ability to make good decisions? So just tick one or all or none of those. Press the submit button and I will end the polling and share the results.
Okay, so that's good to see, interesting to see. Most people have ticked every box. So I think we're all identifying the traumatic things that can happen with a fire. Stress, this is where the fire's coming along and your house may be being affected. And you have to think about things, what's it like going to be if you're in the house, you've got fire alarms going off, you've got pets, and maybe you've got kids, rapidly changing situation. We talked about the ember attack, meaning that suddenly the fire can be on you before you've even, the front's anywhere near you. We all know that things very, very rarely go to plan, especially in a disaster situation, and you're never going to have enough time. And as we found out on the St. Patrick's Day fires, communication broke down. Towers went out, telephones went out because of wind and the wind event that happened before it. So it's good. Most people have ticked all things, Julie.
Yes, and so it makes us realise that people do understand what will impact their decisions, and therefore we need to have a plan, practice a plan, but more importantly, be not in the area. So we might go on to our next section, which asks, how do you know if there's a fire? What sort of things do you look for? What sort of things do you look for in summer on a hot day to let you know that there is a fire or there may be a fire in your area? First thing we might look at is the fire danger ratings. So everyone's seen these signs, either sides of the road, TV, social media, but what do they actually mean? What do these fire danger ratings mean? I'm going to actually launch another poll. This poll asks you that question. How do you know if there's a fire? But it's also asking you, what does the fire danger ratings, the FDRs, mean? I'll just launch this poll. Are they an indication of how likely a fire will start? An indication of how bad a fire will be? And how many code red days has the Southwest had, or severe extreme days have they had? So if you just tick those, remember, we don't know who's voting for what. So if you don't know for sure, have a guess, just have a go, tick one of those.
Yeah, what do you feel would be an accurate answer relating to this, especially 2 and 3?
Yep. And I'll just end the polling and share the results. So the
so the FDR, sorry, Julie, you want me to just have a little chat about this?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, the FDR is an indicator of how, some people have said how likely a fire is to start, and several people have also said about how bad a fire would be if it were to start. I always think, yeah, go ahead.
It's actually an indication of how bad a fire will be.
So the second one there is the more accurate one. And a good way to think about it is, how hard would it be for firefighters to put a fire or to control a fire on those days? So at low, moderate during the winter, if a fire gets started maybe at a house, at a shed or something like that, you can do it pretty easily. If you're thinking of March with a hot north wind and we're up into severe,
Yeah.
it's virtually impossible to control it. So just think about that. The FDR tells you how hard it would be for the CFA to put out a fire on those days.
Yes.
How many code red days?
None.
No, that's right. And most people have said that, because if it was a code red day, it would be all over the news. We'd be told and told and told, and there's lots of implications for it. I'm not sure about, you might be able to help me in. Is Nullawarre under a bushfire overlay, Julie?
Some parts of it would be.
Yeah, because
yes.
if it is, that means that if there's schools in that area, they'd be closed.
Yes.
The district nurse won't be out and about. Meals on Wheels would be called off. So if you've got elderly relatives who rely on those things and there's a code red day, maybe it's a good idea to grab them and take them to Warrnambool with you.
Yes.
And how many severe and extreme days have happened in the last 5 years? Oh, what are people
6.
saying here?
Yeah.
Yeah, once it gets to severe and extreme, we're lucky this year. I don't know if we've had one. We haven't had a TFB, which is incredible. But in a normal year, we'd have several severe and extremes every year.
Yeah.
Well done, people.
Okay, I'll stop sharing those results, and we'll just talk a little bit more about these 3 fire danger ratings. So severe, as Gavin said, they will be hot, dry and windy. And if a fire were to start, it would be very hard to put out. It would become uncontrollable. But on an extreme day, it would be hot, dry and windy again. And this time it would be fast moving. Spot fires will start and it will move in all directions, in every direction. So it would be extremely hard to put out. It will be uncontrollable. And then on a code red day, as Gavin said, apart from all of those services stopping on a code red day, if a fire were to take hold, then it would be near impossible to put out. It would be fought. There would be firefighters trying. There would be people everywhere, but it would be uncontrollable.
Just think of Black Saturday in relation to code red. Yeah.
And if you think of Black Saturday, we've had very, very, well, I don't know whether we've had any days in as extremely bad weather as that since then. Victoria has had some. Yeah, Victoria's had some code red days, but Southwest hasn't. So you need to look at what your triggers are. What's your trigger to leave? Like Gavin said, what's your trigger to leave? Is it a severe, extreme, or a code red day? We might go on now and talk about, well, where do you get your information from? Where do you hear your information? Remember, we're talking about how do you know if a fire starts? So do you listen to the people down the street? Do you listen to the local gossip? Do you depend on your friend who rings you up on the phone and tells you what they think they might have heard? Do you listen? Do you hear people talking on the local radio? Look on Facebook. How reliable is this information? How do you know if any of these things are accurate if you hear that there's a fire? But if we look at these types of information, how do we know, are these much more accurate than the previous slide? I think so. So these are the more formal ways. So yes, listen to your friend, rings you up and tells you there's a fire in the area, but then check it. Go to one of these official places and check that they're fire. The Vic Emergency app, we recommend that everyone has that on their phone. The Vic Emergency hotline, ring the hotline if you see smoke, if you think something's going on, and they'll tell you if there's a fire in the area. If they don't know, then it's your chance to ring 000. Listen to the local news. 774, the local ABC station, is dedicated on extreme days to giving you that information, that weather information. Online, the official Facebook page of the CFA. There's an interpreter service, there's the National Relay Service, and of course there's the emergency alert. If there is a fire in the area where your phone is, you will get an alert to say that there is a fire. Anything else to add to that, Gav?
No, it's always good to have the local ABC, and I think Nullawarre, maybe you would be listening to 3YB or maybe even 3CS if that still exists. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, could be 3CS, yes, and 3YB also have those updates. And
but we certainly recommend the Vic emergency app on or any phone these days. You should really have that one on there.
So if nothing else, by the end of this session, everyone should have had that put on their phone. So CFA does have information for you on fire days of high fire, or if there is an incident or a fire in your area. And these are the things that you're looking for. So an advice might be sent out, and you'll get this on, it can be on the internet, it could be on the radio, it could be on your phone. And an advice message simply says that there's an incident in your area. Something is happening and you need to keep an eye at it. You need to monitor the situation. It's just an advice. It's just telling you that there's something going on. But a watch and act message means that there is something going on. It's not possible. There is something going on in your area and you need to act. You need to enact your bushfire plan. You need to do something. You can't just monitor the situation now. You need to act. You need to have decided what you would do in a situation like this and do it. If you receive an emergency warning, means that you are in imminent danger and you really must act, and that might just simply mean sheltering in place. It is too late to do anything else. So you do not want to wait for warnings, and you do not want to be there when you receive an emergency warning. You also may receive an evacuation warning or an evacuation advice, and that is advice. CFA can't force you to leave your place. I think police have some ability to do that. And a community information is a newsletter or information that is usually given to the community following an incident. So once the fire has passed, once the danger has passed, then the community will receive information as to where they can get information, where they can get help, what forms of services are available.
And people, you should be aware that when we list those warnings, advice, watch and act, emergency, and then evacuation, that doesn't mean that you're going to hear an advice first and then a little while later a watch and act. Particularly in areas like we're living in here with the fast moving grass fires, the first thing you might hear is a watch and act, and in desperate situations, maybe an emergency. So this is why it's always important to be monitoring and listening, because with fast moving grass fires, they can well be on you before any time's passed at all. So don't feel comfortable, oh, we haven't gotten advice or anything, because you might suddenly be given an emergency warning because the fire started near to your property. So it's not a sequence, the warnings reflect the situation around where you are.
Exactly. And that's why we say do not wait for a warning. So this little animation will actually demonstrate exactly what Gav just said. You might be ahead of the warning. So you're in your little house and it's a really hot and windy day. It's a severe day. You've shut the curtains, you're watching Netflix, and a fire starts. And you can see it's not far from your house, but you don't know anything about it yet because you've got your TV on and your power's still going and your curtains are shut. And it'll be 5 minutes at least before someone reports it to 000. So it's reported to 000, say 5 minutes after the fire starts. So now the brigades receive the message. So their pages have gone off and they've gone to the station. So it'll be another few minutes. And it could be another 5 minutes before they've actually in the trucks and out towards the fire. So the fire has now got to this stage. And when the pages went off, when the fire was reported, that's when CFA's information section was told about it. So now your advice message has been released. So you're in your little house, perhaps your power's gone off by now, you're watching TV, you've got your curtains closed, and you receive an advice message. You look out your windows and you can see this massive fire heading towards you. So just as Gavin said, you haven't received an emergency warning. You haven't received a watch and act. The first message you receive is an advice, because that's the first time that the information centre in CFA has heard about it. So by the time you receive the emergency warning, it's gone past you. It's too late. You are ahead of the warnings. And then 30 minutes after the fire starts, it's massive. So it's too late. So that demonstrates perfectly what Gavin was saying about not waiting for a warning. There's no watch and act there. It went straight from advice to emergency. And the advice only went because that's all they had time to set it up. So how do you know if there's a fire if you're not going to depend on the advice messages from CFA? There's a fire. So how do we know if there's a fire if we can't wait for our emergency warnings or our advice warnings? How do we know if there's a fire? And I think this slide might give you a few hints.
Okay, so looking at this, the photo, that's a very dramatic photo, but I'm from over Hayward Way. There was a controlled burn, planned burn in the bush to the west of me the other day. And I was working away outside. And the first thing I noticed was that the nature of the light changed mid-afternoon and took on quite a yellowy hue. And I thought, what's going on here? I walked around the side of the shed and looked, and what you're seeing in that picture is very similar to what I saw. I didn't smell smoke. I couldn't see smoke because I was on the wrong side of the shed, but the whole nature of the light changed. So that was a visual, and these are the type of things that you should be looking out for. And that one there is quite spectacular, as was the one I saw on Saturday near Hayward. People talk about all the different ways that you can get information about fires. Eyes, nose and ears are the very important ones for you to use.
Yeah,
get outside and have a look.
Yep, use your senses. And we often say, if you think there's something wrong, there probably is something wrong. If there's no birds around, like there used to be, like, you know, there was an hour ago. If something feels different in the landscape, probably is different. And you need, and like Gavin said with the light, you need to check it out. You need
just a very small amount of smoke in the air, the sun will start to redden. So that's always a hint. Even though you mightn't be aware of that there's much smoke, if the sun starts to look red, that means there's particulate matter in the sky from smoke.
So use your senses. That's the message here, that you check your FDRs, know what your day is going to be like the next day. You check credible sources like the radio or the Vic emergency app, but you don't wait for warnings. You use your senses and you be responsible for it yourself rather than expecting it from someone else. So what we might do is go on to planning and decision making. So we've talked about all these things that you need to look out for, the nature of fire, where you get that information from, the warnings that we've given you, why you should stay alert and why you should be there. So what I'm going to do is run through a short scenario. So this is a hypothetical. I'll talk you through it. I want you to think of what you would have been doing and what this would have been like if it was you. So it's an extreme day. You're in Nullawarre, you're actually in the township. You drive past the shop there and you pick up the paper and you say, you have to head into Warrnambool because you've got a doctor's appointment. It's really early, it's hot and windy. You know it's going to be an extreme day, but you want to get back to home before it gets too hot. So you drive into Warrnambool, you do your bits and pieces that you have to do, and it's still hot and windy, and people are chasing things around the street, bits of paper are flying around. You decide to grab a cup of coffee before you head home because you can see that, you know, once you get home, you're going to have to bunker down. You grab a cup of coffee, and in the coffee shop, while you're getting your coffee, you hear people saying that there's a fire started out Nullawarre Way. And you think, oh, so you hop on the Vic emergency app and you see the little triangle or the area where the fire is. It's not quite at your place. It's heading to your place, but it's not quite there. So you think, yep, okay, I know what I have to do. I'll get in the car and I'll race home. I'll grab a few things, make sure everything's all right, and because my plan is to leave, my plan is to get out. But you've got enough time. You think you've got enough time. You jump in your car, you drive, head back to Nullawarre, you get to your street, or you get to the road heading to your property, and you find it's blocked by police. There's a tree across the road. You can't go any further. You're not allowed to go home. So how do you feel now? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What's the best course of action for you now? If you can't go back to your place, would you be prepared to head back into Warrnambool and spend the night, 2 nights in Warrnambool? We might actually open up the chat if anyone's got any ideas of what they might do in a situation like that. Would they be prepared? Would you be prepared to spend the night somewhere else? Well, I can see some people would, other people would try and get through that roadblock. They're not going to be, yeah. Some people will look at, listen to the police. That is good. That is what you're meant to do. All right, let's just move on to the next part of the scenario. This time, it's the same day. And this time it's the same day, and this time when you get to your road, you've done your stuff in Warrnambool that you had to do. You heard there was a fire, so you look at your map, and you find that you can get through. There's no roadblock. You check your app, and you can see some smoke. You can see a few bit of twigs. It's pretty windy. But you've checked your app, the fire's not close to your house anymore. So you keep driving, you get to your home, you get to your house, and you run inside and you think, all right, I'm just going to grab a few things and then I'm out of here. I'm back to Warrnambool because I can feel that this is not safe to be here. Keep checking your app, and the little circle isn't any close to you. So you grab the cat's basket and put the cat in. Yep, that's good. You run back in and you grab your passports and your insurance, because you heard that some people couldn't get their insurance, couldn't get any money because they didn't have any proof of who they owned the house. So you race in and you scramble around trying to find that. Back to the car, and as you're getting into the car, you remember, oh, the 5-year-old's birthday was on the weekend, and you took the photos on the camera, not the phone. So you need to go back and get the camera. You don't want to lose those. So you run back in, grab the camera, and you're starting to think, oh, it's getting a bit hairy now. It's getting really windy. And as you come out your front door, you see embers falling from the sky. Those little bits of twigs and leaves are on fire, and they're falling on the ground around you. That pile of leaves that you'd raked up and were meaning to clean up, starting to catch fire. Think back to the ember animation. This is happening to you. So what are you going to do now? What does this mean for you? What are you thinking when you're in a situation like this? What are your thoughts, and how are you going to get out of this? What I might do right now is actually launch another poll, because this poll is going to talk to you about planning and decision making. So I'm going to ask you, where do you think you would be on an average Wednesday in summer? Whereabouts would you be? Would you be at home, work, or on holidays, vacation? Thinking about last summer, would you have been prepared to spend a few nights away from home in an emergency situation? If the police had stopped you, would you be prepared to go back into Warrnambool, spend a couple of nights at your parents' place or at your best friend's place? And last summer, did you have an emergency kit packed with some clothes, your important documents, your photos, your medicines? So if you can just, once again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what you think, and we can't tell who's voting for what. So if you just click on those, don't forget to click submit at the end of it. And I'll end the polling and share the results. So there's an even number of people who have been at home or work. Nobody seemed to have been on vacation at that time. Yeah, some would be prepared to stay a few nights, others wouldn't. Yes, some people did have an emergency kits. That's very good. And we'll talk a little bit about emergency kits in a minute. So thank you for that. I'll just shut that now, shut that, and talk about what this actually does mean to you. What would you have done differently in a situation like that? In this, what would you have done differently in a situation like this? What could you have done to get you out of, to not put you in that situation? What things could you have done differently? So we might open the chat function again. And just if anyone can think of some things that they may have done differently, so you didn't end up in a situation like that. Would you know where your children were? Would you know where your partner was? Your parents, anyone who might be dependent on you? What about your animals? Have you got a plan for them? Do you know if you have horses, where they might be? So what sort of things would you have thought about? What about your neighbours? Oh, someone said that they might have rung their neighbour from Warrnambool to ask them what the situation was like. Taking your emergency kit to Warrnambool, that's an excellent way. That's an excellent way to have done something differently. To be prepared and had it in the car with you. So had those important papers, had that camera, had your passports. Is it possible if you're just running into Warrnambool? Oh, someone said not go, to actually stay at home and then leave when the fire came up on your big emergency act. So remember that CFA says leave early. Don't wait for warnings, but leave early. And have a plan. The best reason to have a plan is so that you can practice it, because in stressful situations like this, and people have already said that in stressful situations, they may not make rational decisions. You need to have had a plan.
There's some good responses there, Julie.
Yep, very good responses. Thank you for that. So make a plan, be prepared, think ahead, stay informed, and you can attend bushfire planning workshops. The CFA run these, and to get that information, hop onto the CFA website and the information is there for you to attend these. There's also on the website, there's information about how to develop your plan, about leaving early and what sort of things you need to do.
And I can assure you that Julie and I, we're much more fun to deal with face-to-face than we are through the internet.
So make an appointment and we can set up something. If in this time of COVID-19, you are able to leave a high-risk area, if you're in isolation, in self-isolation, but you must go straight back into self-isolation in your new area. And you must abide by the same conditions as you were, but you are able to leave a high-risk fire area on the day of high fire. At the beginning of summer, you were also allowed to travel to prepare your property. So what if your survival options, what if you've planned, what if you've got your plan, you know what you're doing, you've done the right thing, but it fails? On the day, it fails. What can you do? So first of all, radiant heat. You need to cover up. Nothing annoys me more than to see people on the top of their roofs in their thongs and their singlets with a garden hose trying to put a fire out. You need to cover up. So with a hat, eye protection mask, with natural fibred clothing, gloves, mask, eyewear. And that, of course, mitigates the radiant heat, the effects of radiant heat on the body. You need, if that radiant heat, if you are caught in a fire, you need to shelter behind a solid object because that will provide some protection. But remember that a solid object may catch fire. So don't depend on it. You may need to be able to, the best place to be obviously is not to be there, but if you do need to shelter behind a solid object, you may need to move as the radiant heat moves. Remember, it can't go around corners. So you're behind a house, but if the house catches fire, then you need to move to a different place. And here are some of the places around your property that you might find a bit of relief. But once again, your best option would be not to be there at all. But if you need to, you might be able to take sanctuary in a river or a dam or a swimming pool, a large amount of water. A ploughed or a cleared paddock, so an area where there is less fuel. So if you need to shelter in somewhere like that, then you go to a place where there is less fuel, not much fuel. Stationary cars are not a good idea. You should not shelter in cars, but if you do find yourself in a car, you should never drive through fire. Never drive through fire. But if you find yourself in the situation that you are on the road, then move off the road and move into an area that is cleared as possible. So it might even be a bit of burnt ground so that there's nothing around you. You need to get down low to avoid that radiant heat. You need to have something over you like a fire blanket. And that's where your emergency kit in your car comes in handy if you've got those things, water to keep hydrated. And you need to monitor the situation. So look outside, just like if you're in a house, you need to monitor the situation, know where the fire is. And as soon as the fire has passed, and it will be hot and dirty and windy and very scary, then get out of your car. Keep your lights on. You do not want to obstruct the road and for emergency vehicles or other vehicles. You don't want to cause or be in an accident. Have you any more to say about any of that, Gavin?
Yes, just looking at all those different things that they've mentioned, it's always important to protect yourself from radiant heat. So wherever you are, you have to think about what can I put between me and the fire to protect yourself from radiant heat. Some of these things are better than others, but it's certainly getting behind a building is safest. But as the CFA says, the safest place is to have left early and not be there.
Yep. So to not be there is your safest option. Yep.
But as we said, if everything goes wrong, the most important thing is to protect yourself from radiant heat.
Yeah. Yes. CFA does have neighbourhood safer places. There are no neighbourhood safer places in Nullawarre, so your closest ones would be Panmure and Peterborough, which are a fair way away, a long way away. If there is a fire, like 16 kilometres and 17 kilometres away. So once again, neighbourhood safer, bushfire neighbourhood safer places are places that are usually cleared. There's a formula that they have to adhere to actually be declared a neighbourhood safer place, and they will be designated with a sign similar to the one you're seeing on your screen. They are still not, they are definitely a last resort. They are there in case you need them, but they are not there to be part of your plan. They are there if you need to go somewhere because your plan has failed. They're usually in the open, so they're not comfortable. They'll may still be under ember attack. The radiant heat will still be a problem, but if your plan fails, if everything else fails, those places are there for you.
That's Hayward in the top right-hand corner.
Pardon? The top right, is that you?
That's Hayward, yeah.
Ah, that's Hayward. Hayward, that's a bit far from Nullawarre. Don't try to go to Hayward's safer place.
That's my hometown, everybody.
Yeah, Nino is. So these images show what it would be like to be driving through fire. what it would be like to have a fire in the paddock, and you'll see that grass fires can be fast moving, create that smoke and that heat just as badly or just similar to bushfires. Grass fires are just as dangerous and just as scary as grass fires. Don't think just because you're in a grass fire area that you won't experience all those things that you would experience in a bushfire.
And without wanting to upset people around your area of Nullawarre, you only have to look back to Ash Wednesday to know of so many people died due to grass fires.
Yes. So yeah, so we know, most people would know how dangerous they are. So take action, make a plan. So download your resources, your guide to survival, your guide to property preparation. So even though CFA says leave early, and CFA does say leave early, leave your property prepared so that when there is a chance when you come back to it, that it is still there, or part of it is still there. So you can still prepare your property even if you're going to be leaving. Have a plan. Organise a bushfire planning workshop with the CFA if you need help to make up your plan. Have your family and everyone know what your plan is. Definitely download the Vic Emergency app. Have that on your phone so that you know what's going on, but use your other senses as well. Connect with your local brigade, and your local brigade at Nullawarre is Jason Burley, and his phone number is there. If you need to talk to him about your plan, probably not a good idea to try and talk to him if he's in the middle of an emergency. But before then, if you need some help, then's the time to contact your local brigade. On a severe day, on an extreme day, they will be prepared, they will be there. But we talked about their ability to protect everyone. It's just not there. So you need to take responsibility for yourself. You need to have a plan. And if any of this has affected you in any way, especially people who may have lived through Ash Wednesday, there are places that you can go. There is support available, and talk to a loved one or a friend is often as good as anything, but you can contact Beyond Blue or contact Lifeline for that help. So that ends our presentation for tonight. I would like to thank you very much for attending, for listening to us and putting up with my my skills, my technology skills. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Gavin. It was very good to receive your assistance in that.
Thanks, Julie. Julie and I have worked together for many years on the CFA, but this is a totally new experience for us too. So we're looking forward to getting back face to face, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We definitely are looking forward to getting back to face to face. So perhaps at the beginning of next season, we might be able to do that.
So be safe, everybody, and have a plan.
And thank you. Thanks.